And we want to take this conversation a rung deeper. And looking at what we have on the front page of the Star as well, the sidebar story there is all about Attorney General. And we know previously there has been an attempt to try and, tame his powers. Auditor General not off the hook. This is what we have as MPs process petition for removal. And just to give you a background of this, Director of Public Prosecutions Kisumu Senator has cleared Auditor General Edward Ouko of allegations of corruption and fraud over the irregular procurement of an audit vault software by his office. The cost of the audit vault software had been inflated from 18 million shillings to 100 million shillings. The DPP, however, wants Ouko's deputy in charge of corporate services, Stephen Kinuthia, charged with corruption and abuse of office for corruptly giving a benefit of 500,000 shillings to Charles Gishobi, a sales executive of Oracle, and acquiring proceeds of crime worth 27 million shillings.
EACC's investigations into the goings-on in the Office of the Auditor-General had been triggered by a letter from PS National Treasury Kamau Thuge, dated on the 8th of April 2014, that had compiled a litany of allegations and anonymous complaints against the office. The PS attached a letter from a whistleblower who raised several allegations touching on the procurement of an audit vault software at an exaggerated cost of 100 million shillings against the market price of 18 million shillings. EACC investigations unearthed details of how top officers at the Auditor General's office conspired to overlook the tendering procedures, handpicked the supplier of the software, and paid the entire contract sum of 100 million shillings. Director of Public Prosecutions Kisumu Senator has now absolved the Auditor General of any wrongdoing. He says claims against him had not been supported by evidence. But his deputy in charge of corporate services, Stephen Kinuthia, will be facing charges of corruption and fraud. Kinuthia stands accused of dealing with suspect property, 27 million shillings, proceeds from the acquisition of the software, engaging in corrupt practices and colluding. Another 6 will be charged with economic crimes in relation to this acquisition. The DPP had expressed concerns about being pressured to prosecute the Auditor General over the 100 million shillings procurement. On his part, the country's chief auditor has expressed his frustrations with not being allowed a free hand to do his job, and with recommendations on how to stop the bleeding remaining tucked inside the pages of his reports.
We are all frustrated. What are we going to do? We should be able to see the shilling from the time it's budgeted, it's recorded, and where it hit the ground.
In September last year, the Auditor General said 215 billion shillings from Eurobond proceeds had not been accounted for, 2 years after the government claimed the cash had been allocated to ministries. In his reports, he said there was no proof of receipt of expenditure of that money anywhere in government. Sheila Sendeo, NTV.
Well, this particular story also is tucked away on page 6 of the Star. And we have also Nyanza leaders warning Jubilee against intimidating Ouko. 3 Nyanza leaders have warned Jubilee against intimidating Auditor General Edward Ouko with sack threats for exposing corruption deals in government. We have Sia Kanel Rasanga, Ugunja MP, Opio Wandai, and Rarieda MP Nicholas Gumbo, who said Jubilee has resorted to gagging independent institutions through sack threats. And also, this is what it says: Auditor General may not be off the hook yet as MPs process petition. The grounds for the removal from office attempts are based on a report by EACC. Standing orders are clear. Petition must raise substantive grounds on claims made. And I want to hear from members of parliament who are here. First of all, we saw there was an attempt previously to actually tame his powers, where we saw this particular act which now is in place. It was the Public Auditor General's bill. Now it has been enacted, and in that particular act they were saying that also domicile within that particular act will be the Public Service Commission will be given the prerogative to actually hire staff for the Auditor General. I don't know if that was contested or is still also in that particular act. Let's hear from Honorable Makali. First of all, why are you pushing the envelope to actually see the Auditor General go home?
Yeah, thank you. I think the Auditor General's office is an independent office. It's actually one of the independent offices in our constitution. And when you look at what the Auditor General does in this country, he exposes cases of corruption and misdirection of public resources. And it's obvious that you don't expect many people to be friends with such an office, especially if you are in the government. So what is happening is some of these things you see is as a result of him really doing his work properly in terms of exposing in quite a lot of details what is happening in the government. And when you look at, like what you've said, the whole issue of bringing an amendment to bring the Public Service Commission to hire officers for this office was an attempt also to control the office. And the question we have been asking all through is, if it's an independent office, and we have quite a number of other independent offices in this country, why do we want to single this one out and manage it differently from the others? So this is a war, really, which has been waged on this particular office. And the petition which has been discussed in the papers was presented by a group of Kenyans. But this was before the DPP was able to give his funding in terms of whether he has a case to answer or not. So I'm sure with now the current status where he has been cleared by the DPP, in terms of what the petition was asking Parliament to do, that could change because now there's a change in terms of status. But generally what I would want to say is that I think as Kenyans, we need to respect this kind of offices, independent offices, because they have been put there for a particular purpose, and immediately we start interfering with them, then we water down their importance. But I think generally, I'm a member of the budget committee, and we've been going through with the Auditor General in terms of what we are budgeting, and I agree with him. If you budget for resources, there is always what is targeted to be achieved in terms of intended purpose. These are the outputs, and if we don't really do thorough auditing of our resources, then we will not achieve the so-called economic growth we talk about every year. So I would want to see a situation where this office is respected. And let's not really look at the individual who is holding this particular office today. Let's look at the office, because today is Ouko, tomorrow it will be somebody else. And so long as that particular office is respected, I think it will help this country move forward, and more so in reducing corruption, which is a major problem.
Prof, do you think there is any particular attempt from the current regime to make sure that these independent institutions, they are not truly independent? We've seen also another bill, the Attorney General's bill as well, because it does not seemingly pander to the whims of the executive. And so also the members of parliament, they want to tame the powers of Attorney General.
Yes, I think I agree with my colleague here about the Auditor General's office. And quite honestly, I would like independent offices to be respected, both by politicians and by the government. So long as an independent holder of an independent office does his or her job according to the Constitution and according to the law that established that office, they should be allowed to do their work. Now, we have seen systematic attempts by this particular regime to muzzle independent offices. Just it happened during the Moi regime. I mean, increasingly we are seeing that kind of attempt. I think it may serve the interests of politicians in power now, but it will not serve the interests of this country. The Attorney General is an independent office. It doesn't matter who holds it. The Auditor General is an independent office. It doesn't matter who holds it. So let that offices exist according to law and according to the Constitution. And by the way, there are proper procedures of calling the holders of those offices to account when they misuse those offices. Those procedures exist in law too. So it should not be a knee-jerk reaction, either by the government or anybody else, to wake up one morning and find that Ouko has questioned the Eurobond thing, and immediately you set up a political process to harass those offices. You know, men and women of integrity, if you continue like that, they will resign. They will definitely resign and say, okay, fine, you don't want me to do my job, take your office, and they will go. If you then appoint a mediocre into that office, the country will suffer. So Parliament and other institutions exist to make sure that things like those don't happen. And let us not tribalize these offices, because that's perhaps the worst thing in this country. You know, let's not do that. Let us stick to the law. Let us stick to principles. Let us hold those principles, whoever holds those offices. Now, let me give you another example. We parliamentarians, Farah will remember for many, many years, and Shem will remember that, we have always questioned this idea that monies voted to the security forces are not audited. We think it is a travesty. But
because
so
it's shrouded in, it is supposed to be secrecy. Yes.
Yeah, billions. But so long as, you know, there's a law that exists to that effect, that law must be changed. Now, in the US, you saw recently, when they were interviewing the appointees to certain offices, the senators, when it came to issues like security, receded to what we call into camera, to discuss, because they know the national interest, you see. But you see, there's this country, the suspicion that if parliamentarians begin discussing questions going to the military and so on, that it will get out of hand. No, we should begin to establish a tradition.
All right, but
where everybody is accountable.
What is the beauty of the Access to Information Act that was just enacted, I think, this year?
No.
Was it last year?
In the last parliament.
In the last parliament?
Yes.
No.
In the last parliament?
Yes.
No. It was last year.
Okay,
Yeah.
the trouble is that then,
Was it amended?
such laws may exist.
Completely
Then
watered
the
down.
government, executive, refuse to obey them. And this is the travesty in this country. I think we should be filial to the laws that we passed, whether it wraps the government the wrong way. Look at what has happened in the US now. Trump issued an executive order saying that foreigners from the following countries must go through certain special clearance when they arrive, or giving quarters. Somebody went to court, a federal court. The judge said this is illegal. They went to the appeal court. The appeal court said this is illegal because Trump, as a president, was going against the Constitution of the U.S. Yeah. So when law is there and the Constitution is there, nobody, including the government, should go against it.
All right, and we can see also. Yes, let's hear from. We'll come to you.
We want to see what Parliament will do, because what the petitioners have done is just to follow what is laid down in the Constitution, and it may be factual or otherwise. Maybe it's just a malicious exercise. And this is, again, it calls on the integrity of the readers at all levels. If the readership in Parliament and members of Parliament have the integrity that Kenyans expected of them, then they will do away with the petition. But if they don't rise up to the occasion, they are likely to entertain a useless petition. But what I think is also important to celebrate what is being done, because even the holders of the independent offices, like it is provided for under the Constitution, Article 248, are also being told, we can petition you.
Yes.
That is a good thing. Everybody needs to know that he is subject to the rule of law. I wanted to point out that these commissions and independent offices are protected by the Constitution. And for the good reasons that they were being shielded from political manipulation. The politicians in Parliament must live up to the billing. We expect them to show some good sense in protecting some of these offices if they need to be protected. And of course, if they don't need to be protected, they need to be done away with, because it is both ways. We have people who are holding independent offices who are not performing and not helping us at all. But again, every other person who is going to be audited by, and it doesn't apply to Jubilee only, would want to make sure that you don't have those kind of powers that come to make my leadership or my governance difficult. So it's upon Parliament to do their work. We shouldn't, but I like the fact that we are petitioning. We should see more petition to those independent offices, but based on facts, not malicious petitions.
All right.
Debarl, it's important to understand the intent of the framers of this Constitution. When we're framing this Constitution, and the memory is, Kenya's memory is very short. This Constitution was promulgated in 2010. So it's hardly, not even 10 years old. And we have already forgotten the objects and the spirits and the reasons why we had certain provisions or articles in the Constitution. For example, when you talk, Article 249 says the objects of the commissions, that's independent commissions. And the independent offices are to protect the sovereignty of the people. Sovereignty of the people. They are responsible to the people of Kenya. They're not responsible to the president or his deputy or any other, to the people of Kenya. To secure the observance by all state organs of democratic values and principles and promote constitutionalism. And this is the most important. Commissions and the holders of independent office are subject only to this Constitution and the law, and are independent and not subject to direction or control by any person or authority. Parliament shall allocate adequate funds to enable each commission and independent office to perform its functions, and the budget of each commission and independent office shall be a separate vote. Here they are saying that the Public Service Commission is going to help this independent commission recruit its own staff. The independence has already been taken away from that office. Let me be honest with you on that. You cannot, if you just imagine they're trying to replicate that in the IEBC, in the Police Commission, in all these other commissions, and say, no, Public Service Commission is going to recruit for you. This is a commission, and I'll tell you this, and you see, the sad part of it is that when Trump made this unconstitutional order, by the way, it's not still proven by court as an unconstitutional, but in the eyes of somebody who went to court, the judge who ruled that in the federal court is a conservative judge appointed by the Bush administration, you get my point, who had a 99-0 approval in the Senate when he was coming in.
Right,
in effect, it's telling you that this judge is not looking at the partisan persuasion of his own ideological beliefs. Yeah. He's looking at the Constitution and the national interest here. Yeah. This is an Auditor General who was wrapped and castigated by the President in the State House for insisting that he wants to travel to New York to go and investigate these things.
Thank you.
Ordinarily, hang on a minute, it's a very big issue, and let's not gloss over it. Ordinarily, the president should be the man who is going to uphold this constitution first and foremost. Yeah. For him to wrap an independent officer, for that officer to seek, to say that I think I can get information, to guide me on this from New York and tell him, why do you want to go to New York? And admonish him in front of everybody, is a clear indication that the system itself does not want this office to work.
Thank you. Let's hear from Shem as we're winding up. Let's hear from Shem.
Debarl, maybe just before I comment on the Auditor General, just allow me to. The two callers made very important points.
No, let's just comment on the Auditor General because we're strapped for time.
Okay. In terms of the Auditor General, I think I concur with my colleagues. Let's not tribalize it. In fact, I feel nervous when it's written Nyanza MPs. Why should it be Nyanza MPs? Auditor General is doing work for every Kenyan. In fact, in the same way, I would go out of my way to defend the governor of the central bank, even though not coming from where I come from, because he's doing a good job. So I think some of those people need to be defended. But having said that, in terms of auditing security reports and so forth, and the Right to Information Act, or the Freedom of Information Act, I think what happens elsewhere is that if you can't go into camera, let them be interrogated by the Defense and International Relations Committee, because to that extent, what people expect that members of that committee are all a certain threshold in terms of confidence, if it's security, if it's secret issues of national security and so on.